Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here with you this morning. So the assignment that I was asked to prepare was to look at indicators and trends in food access issues in urban communities. And before I do that specifically, I want to set a little bit of context around the comments that I would make, and actually the context within which I think about sustainability. And that context simply is that my belief is we have a food system that is broken. It's fundamentally broken and out of control. And what we often define as problems to be solved are actually symptoms of a system that's severely broken. You know, whether we're talking about environment, health, affordability, access, hunger, concentration of resources and power, which we've talked about already this morning, I don't believe that it's going to be possible to solve any of those problem by problem. These are not problems to be solved. They're symptoms of a system that's broken and that needs to be redesigned. And that it's really important for us to think about embedding principles of sustainability. And Gail, I heard you talk a little bit about some of those principles around health and nutrition, to embed those principles in a redesigned food system. My next belief is that when any of our systems are broken, the symptoms are felt earliest and harshest in what I would call our historically excluded urban communities. And whether we talk about a broken food system, a broken healthcare system, a broken education system, and I'm here to tell you from direct experience about our broken financial system, the symptoms are felt the most harsh and the earliest in our historically excluded urban communities. So even the exercise that I went through of attempting to identify indicators for food access in urban communities, which is what I was asked to do, points out one way in which these communities remain historically excluded. They're actually even excluded from our ability to track food access issues with any high degree of confidence or convenience. You know, any of us could very easily, within a couple of hours, find readily available statistics on everything from per acre use of pesticides, fertilizers, what crops are being planted where, what average yields are. By county, we can very easily find out information, very specific information about soil down to the field level. But I want to tell you, if you want to use, for example, food insecurity as a measure of food access, well, you can find it. It's available at the state level in this country. And if you want to find that information at any finer degree of granularity than at the state level, you're into an independent research project where you've got to find researchers and get the money and do it. So this historical exclusion is not just about access to food, it's about access to information. And I don't believe that without access to good information, we really have the ability on any kind of scientific or evidence-based measure to try to change things. Well, why is it important to have good metrics for this aspect around food access in urban communities? I believe it's because, so if you believe my assumption for a minute, if you're willing to at least sit with it for a minute and try it on, that we have a broken food system that needs to be redesigned, and the place the symptoms of that system are felt the harshest and the earliest is in our historically excluded communities, then this is also where we're going to learn about whether the redesign experiments that we're doing are working. That we need to see whether those redesign experiments are having an impact on these historically excluded communities in terms of food access. And right now, we don't even have a way to measure that very well. Given all that, even with the difficulties in identifying metrics and indicators for food access, I think it remains a really critical consideration for a sustainable food system in which, as Patricia said, equity is as important a principle as economic viability or environmental stewardship. So in the paper that I prepared for this symposium, I did suggest 4 what I would actually call proxy indicators. I actually don't think we have very many good indicators around food access, but as proxies, for example, we could look at the number and size of food deserts, which are, it's a term used to describe a geographical area in which there's an imbalance of healthy food options. where physical access to marginal food outlets or fast food restaurants is much greater than access to any kind of full-service grocery or a place where you could get the kind of healthy food as Gail defined it. We could look at the prevalence of household food insecurity. I've already mentioned, to do that in any reasonable manner for urban communities means we need to have much better data collection. We could look, as Gail had mentioned, prevalence of diet-related disease. That's a reasonable proxy. Now that we know that the top causes actually of mortality, rather than being infectious disease or accidents, are actually chronic disease associated with diet. They're now at the top of the list. And finally, something else I'm hearing on our panel too, the idea of direct farm-to-consumer sales. That, again, it's not a direct measure of healthy food access, but as those direct sales from farmer to consumer through CSAs, farmers markets, and so forth in urban communities increase, then we would expect that to indicate greater access overall. So, you know, my summary here is that while it's critically important to be able to have indicators and metrics around food access in our historically excluded urban communities, we've got a lot of work to do just to be able to measure what's going on there, much less make a difference in the actual state of affairs.
Great. Thank you, Oran. Thank you all.